Good morning, Nelson County Schools community, and welcome to the Community Brew. Today we're going to be engaging in a conversation around the conversations we've had with families this week and thinking about how we can further support those families as we look at returning to school in August. So we have a panel today of 3 Nelson County Schools principals, 3 teachers, and 3 parents. So we will start off. I'll introduce you to the first principal on the panel, and that is Mr. Ben Monnett from Nelson County High School.
Good morning, everybody. Ben Monnett, Nelson County High School. Happy to be here and join on the Community Brew. I want to take a second to introduce my guest that I brought along with me today. So our parent is Miss Amanda Deaton, who has a freshman, Oliver, who will be a freshman at Nelson County High School this year. And then our teacher represented today is Miss Renee Shannon, who's a gifted minds leader, also a parent of a child in our high school as well. I will throw it over to our second principal with us today, third principal, Tiffanie Clark.
Hi, Nelson County community. I'm Tiffanie Clark, principal at the New Haven School. I'm excited to be here with Casey Ayers, a classroom leader at the New Haven School, who is also a parent of ours, and Vanessa Hurst, a parent representative for the New Haven School. Casey and Vanessa, can you guys say hi?
Hello.
Good morning.
Awesome, thank you all. And I'm Melissa Case. I'm the principal at Old Kentucky Home Middle School. And we have with us this morning Miss Jessica Adams. She has a 7th grade student, Bailey, at OKH. And then Mr. Cameron Richards, he is our band and STEM teacher, quite a combination. Phenomenal teacher there. If you guys want to say hello this morning.
Good morning, everyone.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our first question, and we're going to pitch that to our parents this morning. We've been reaching out all over Nelson County Schools to each of our families to kind of get a gauge in what they're thinking around returning to school. So parents, where is your heart and mind around our return to school right now?
I guess I can start if that's okay. I'm most anxious with all this news from JCPS and other districts about not going back to school in person. I'm most anxious about that. My kids have been off for a long time, and it was challenging last spring doing the virtual learning. So the thought that we would have to do that again just makes my heart hurt. So that's where my heart is.
I'm ready and eager to start, or for our kids to start back to school. My kids are ready. They are so done with summer break, believe it or not. They're more excited to go back to school than they are to go on vacation, which is a first in our family, and which is wonderful. I mean, it means they love their school. Our family's just ready to move forward and start gaining a routine again. We struggled with NTI, especially with my younger 2 in elementary school. So, and they're just ready to see their teachers and their friends.
Jessica, do you see there should be a microphone on the bottom of your image that you would click on that microphone and it unmutes you? Do you see that?
Okay. Yeah, my kids are ready to get back to school too. They're ready to be in that routine. We are anxious and worried about what's going to happen, but it's something I think we're going to have to do at some point in time. So everybody in my household's ready to roll.
I think that's a common thing that we've kind of heard from parents across the board. We definitely have people across the spectrum who have different needs for their kiddos and their families. I think overall people are excited to get back into a routine, whatever that routine looks like. We have some families that kids are eager to get back. We have others that have, for one reason or another, more concerns and really looking at that virtual option and what that means for our kiddos. So I think as leaders within the community, us creating options for both is definitely healthy at this point. And I was going to kind of toss it back to some of the teachers too. Or what are you guys hearing when you're communicating with families? Are there specific things that people are wanting to know? Or other ideas or things they're thinking through when we think about reopening school?
In my experience when calling the families, the biggest concern is how are we going to socially distance? And I'm telling them we're going to try our best to do what we can, but we also need the students to do their part as well. They need to understand that they have to follow these rules to be safe and to keep everyone else safe. And so we just need to make sure that across the board we're being team players and looking out for everybody.
Yeah, that follows along with quite a bit from what I've heard from parents wanting to make sure that they have all the policy information that we're going to be using to keep their children in place, safe in schools, as well as asking, well, what happens if I decide down the road that I want my student home? Am I able to make that choice later on in order to transition them from in-person to virtual?
In my experience talking to some of the younger students, one of the main questions, does my child have to wear a mask all day? Because I know that's a struggle. I kind of had a mixture. Some were all for virtual because they either were close with grandparents or lived with grandparents, and they were worried about that. But I think generally some of the same questions that you guys got, 6 feet apart and wearing a mask, were two of the biggest questions.
So what Renee was sharing is something that we've also been thinking about and discussing as well. How will we keep them socially distant? And everybody has their part to play in that. We've engaged in conversations around it's going to be really important for us to, one, model that as the leaders, and then two, to really spend the time with our students to help them understand the importance of keeping the mask on and keeping a safe social distance. And it's not just about myself in this situation. It's about who I return home to, and then who those people go out and see. So just really working with our students to try to see the bigger picture, just beyond self. And I think that's something that we're obviously going to have to spend time on. But I say all the time, the students at OKH are the best students in the world, Tiffanie and Ben. And they embrace that, and they're just phenomenal kids. And I know if we spend that time really sharing with them the importance, that the buy-in will be far greater.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about that. I feel like with parents and teachers as well, we know this is also a learning opportunity. We know we have young kids who have not had to experience masks or socially distancing. So being okay with the fact that that's going to be a lesson that we continue to teach, we're going to be able to coach our kids through that, and feeling confident that all of our kids love each other and know the importance of safety. And I think the piece of empathy and being such a tight-knit community at New Haven, I don't think that's going to be a struggle for us. I think it's something that we're prepared to coach our families and kiddos through, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's where some of the value came this week in our opportunities to meet as principals and school leaders with staff, and then have our staff reach out to parents. There's a lot of things that we can plan for as we think through it, but some things we can't think about until we make contact with those people who are experiencing with us. So the opportunity to meet with our staff this week was invaluable, to be able to hear what their concerns were as leaders in our building, and then for them to turn around to our parents and to really hear maybe some concerns that we hadn't thought about, and be able to bring that back to our table to plan further for how we can give more clarity on this return, I think is really invaluable. So I would encourage all those, obviously we've spoken with parents who are here right now, but all those who have yet to make contact with their schools, to really reach out and to voice your concerns, because in order for us to make those plans in the most efficient way, we need everyone's voice, and we need to know where our blind spots are in that.
So I'm thinking, parents, as you have talked to your kiddos about returning to school, what are some of their concerns, and how do you feel like maybe we could support them in the concerns that they currently have?
My kids are excited about the possibility of returning, so I don't know that they have concerns per se, but I mean, I think they're anxious about what it will look like. You know, the way we're going to be handling with the masking and the social distancing, because they're all very social and, you know, looking forward more than anything to being back with their friends. So just what that will look like may give them a little anxiety.
I think the only thing that my kids are worried about is wearing the mask and how long they're gonna have to wear them, and that's the only thing they're concerned about. They're just, you know, because it's physically affecting them. They don't understand the social distancing and how that's gonna affect them until they get there and see that. So that's their main concern, is just what's gonna affect them immediately, which is the mask that they have to wear. And so they're asking, how long am I gonna have to have it on? Can I take it off? You know, that type of thing. And I guess there's concerns with, you know, if I lose it during the day, well, how am I gonna, you know, gonna need to have an extra one in my backpack, or what I'm gonna have to do.
Hey, Ben, sorry, Vanessa, go ahead.
I was just going to add that I do have a child that's a little more anxious about things, and his concern was what happens if one of my friends gets sick. So I think being clear with them about what happens in that case, you know, and what we're going to do, what it's going to look like, for not just for parents, you know, to know what's going to happen, but for the kids too, because they do think about that.
That's a great point. Definitely providing our kids with the support to help them understand the whole process and making sure that they feel safe and they feel like their friends are safe. That's awesome. Thanks, Vanessa. Hey, Ben, what's YouTube world look like? Do we have any comments over there?
Well, I definitely feel like I'm the live reporter of the group today, on scene in my vehicle here. So Kathy Walker took a second to point that out. I am channeling my inner Jerry Brooks as I sit in my car today and participate. So no, we've got some comments just kind of talking about the things we're all experiencing. So everyone missing our students here. Dana Cole pointing out as well that, you know, our plans really do hinge on knowing the feelings and questions and thoughts of our community, both staff and student families. Really a lot of love from our group here, just understanding the situation we're in, but also understanding and valuing the importance of information being communicated. So YouTube world, please keep funneling some questions here that you may have specifically for our group as you see them.
Thanks, Ben. So another question kind of for the panel right now, as principals and classroom leaders, what do you think is going to be important over the next week that we keep in mind as we start, you know, continuing to plan for what this opening looks like? What are some things you think that we can communicate with parents? And then parents, feel free to jump in. Are there specific things, you know, just specifically over the next week that we can support you with?
I think just maintaining that open policy of communication, that authentic communication between parents and school leaders, letting them know as things come up, new policies come in place, what they can plan for and what their students can plan for as it's happening, and to let them know that we're here to support them as much as we can, and to always feel comfortable calling, texting, emailing school personnel so that we can offer them that assistance as they need it.
I agree with Cameron, just kind of staying in touch with parents and letting them know, you know, what it looks like, trying to answer the questions to the best of our ability, that we know. You know, it's kind of, we don't really know what it's going to look like until we actually go, I don't feel like, but just kind of staying in connection with those parents and talking to those parents.
You guys have hit the nail on the head. We have to make sure we maintain that connection with our community, because if we don't keep them in the loop and informed, then they're not going to be supportive of us when we need them to be supportive. So maintaining those relationships is huge in this situation.
And as a parent, I appreciate, like Cameron said, the communication, but not just the mailings and the social media. Getting that telephone call this week, that was that really sets your mind at ease. So just the direct communication, there's no substitute for that.
Actually kind of was going to talk through that too. I think the human connection piece, being able to really have a voice behind things. We got lots of great feedback from families saying like, we really appreciate just hearing you, letting us ask you questions directly. Even if we don't have the answers, just being able to listen to them. I think the big piece in that too is, every family's in such a different situation. Being able to talk to individual families and see like, what are your concerns? How can we support you through this? I think has been incredibly important. And for me as a new leader within the New Haven community, really seeing where families are with it has really helped me a huge deal.
So I'm thinking like as we're talking about supports for families and talking with our parents, like I enjoyed that so much. I enjoyed connecting with the parents and hearing the excitement and enthusiasm for coming back to school. And it's that I want my kiddo to go back to school and have that socialization, and they miss it so much. And then also that I also want to make sure they're safe. So I really appreciated those conversations and actually got some ideas from some parents about some things that we can do to make our situation even safer. And as we're having this conversation today, I'm wondering like, what is our next step with actually communicating with our students? And so right now it's going from teachers or principals to parents and then to students. So like, how do we make sure that we are having conversations with our students to ensure that the questions that they have are being answered and the ways that they need to feel supported is happening? So like today, Ms. Robinson and I are actually having a Google Meet with our Care and Connect. So it was something that just kind of evolved. But as I'm thinking about this, I'm like, this is going to be a great time for us to talk with them about the things that they feel like they need to feel better about coming back. So do you guys as parents, and so even teachers as parents, do you feel like other than the mask is something that students are concerned about, are there other ways that you can think of that we could potentially support your students as we transition back to school?
I think one thing for me is having a policy and procedure in place as to what's going to happen. I know that's a work in progress and what you're going to see over the next few weeks and what you're going to be working on. But I think one of my concerns is that when all these kids get back together, they're going to get sick, and it may or may not be due to COVID-19. I know that they're not going to be allowed to go back to school until they're tested positive or negative, and then quarantined. Is there a possibility that you all will be doing that at the school, or is it going to have to be done off-site? I know right now it's hard to get into certain places to get tested for the coronavirus. So, it's 2 or 3, 4 days out with all these kids getting sick and, potentially getting sick, because strep does tend to skyrocket when school starts back. So, are you all going to be doing those testings, or is that a possibility, or is that going to be just a stay at home and quarantine yourself type thing?
I think that's a good question. I think that's one that we don't currently have an answer for, but I absolutely appreciate and value it. And it's something that we can probably explore in the weeks ahead. So thank you for pitching that out there.
So I've had a couple of comments in the YouTube chat, and I wanted to get some feedback from our panel based on those comments. So we've had some good conversations over here about the importance of socialization for our students. Obviously, that's a really big component of why we go to school every day, so our kids learn how to interact, how to collaborate, and communicate with their peers. And I had Brian Stevenson bring up, the need for their kids to be socialized, and then Haley Victory at Cactus Creek talking about the importance of making those phone calls this week to build those relationships and to reestablish those as well. So a question for our panel here, I think, would be, how do we kind of meet those socialization needs of our students from the different perspectives we have? So as school leaders, as teachers, and as parents, how are we trying to meet those socialization needs of our students who are probably worried that if they come back to school, that they won't be able to socialize with their peers? How do we answer that question?
I think that's something we're starting to create with our teams when we think about the different care and connect structures and consistency with communicating with individual kids on a daily basis. I think that's something we're starting to work through with our staff on what that looks like and how we make that, the most effective or providing opportunities for that throughout the school day, even though we know that's going to look very different. I think that's definitely something we're thinking about as a staff, but something we're having to create when we've never done this before. I think, Ben, you mentioned there were several comments or questions, specific questions coming in through YouTube. So I just want to kind of give you a reminder. We do have ncs.com, and there is a tab there where you can enter specific questions, so that if we don't have those answers or we don't get to those today on the Community Brew, we can definitely be thinking about that. That gives us opportunities as leaders to create those opportunities or think through what those answers might be. So again, if you have specific questions, please visit welcomebackncs.com and enter those questions in there so we can either find the answer, create the answer, or at least get back to you with the answer.
And I'll say, if you haven't been to welcomebackncs.com, a lot of the questions that we are getting from parents, the answers lie within those pages. So it has to do with safety, and it has to do with what that virtual environment might look like. And it is a lot of information to siphon through, so completely understandable if you haven't been able to make your way through all of that. But as questions arise, that's a really good place to go to see if there is already an answer there for you, or at least a way to find an answer. And the truth is, we all know that answers are kind of changing day by day and sometimes hour by hour. So again, back to the communication piece, I think that's where we can provide some reprieve from the anxiety, is just continuing to communicate those changes as we get them.
I just want to throw in there about the socialization of children. I think we don't give our kids enough credit for how resilient they are and how adaptive they are. It's my guess that, as we get into this and figure out how it's going to work out and actually see it in practice, our kids are really going to, they're going to adapt to it, and it's going to come organically, and it's going to come from them. So I think we can overthink this as much as we want to and talk about it all day long, but when it comes down to it, until we put it in practice and see, they're going to surprise us, is what I'm getting to. I think we worry way more about it than they are. I just think that I think they will adapt and show us what can happen, and I think there's a lot of potential there for them to help us learn and grow.
I think you're absolutely right, Vanessa. I say it all the time. After we do anything with kids around here, our minds are blown. Like, we never expected it to end up looking like that, or we never expected it to end up feeling like that. And you're right, we don't give them enough credit. They always, it's like we set the standard and then they surpass it. And so I love that you said that, because they are resilient. And I, like, even as I'm moving into and out of Walmart and places like that, it seems like the kids are the ones that are like, whatever, I have a mask on, no big deal. And we're steaming up our glasses and can't breathe, and they're just moving on, doing their thing. So I would agree with you, and I appreciate you sharing that.
So one thing I just wanted to piggyback off of what Vanessa said there as well is just I think we underestimate the ability of our students to understand the situation we're going through, and I think we're missing out on the opportunity to help them grow as people if we don't address this situation, help them be part of the answer to that, and not continue to keep these conversations isolated to us at the top, us adults in the room, right? They're experiencing this. This will be something that they look back on their lives as a huge impact and something that will stay with them for the rest of their life. So what we were really trying to focus our conversations with parents on and with our teachers is, how do we engage our students more fully in this situation that we're in? Let's not pretend it doesn't exist. Let's not pretend that it's not strange that we have gone to virtual instruction for the end of last year, and that may be on our table this year. but let's embrace that and let's teach them how to learn through this. So one of the things that I valued being a new member to this district and a new school year in this district is the focus on those relationships and on the humanity of the work that we do, right? So we are in the human business, right? We're in the social business every day. We instruct kids, we help them grow, but ultimately we're teaching them how to be productive citizens. And that's learning how to deal with situations like we're in right now and how you adapt and how you rely upon the relationships you have with others to get you through. So I think it's important that we really think through how we engage our students right now from all of our different perspectives, from people on this panel and those who are watching, on how we can really empower our students so that way they're not operating from a place of fear with all of this.
Piggybacking off of kind of Ben and Vanessa when to think about our kids, and Melissa talked about this too. I think being able to model these things, again, saying it out loud, being able to own it, providing our kids opportunities to talk about their feelings and what that looks like for them, I think is going to be important. But my example is of my 3-year-old. She clearly doesn't have to wear a mask, but boy, when she sees her sisters and mommy put a mask on, it is like game on. Where's my mask? I want to do this too. So I think we're going to learn from our kids too. They're going to hold us accountable as long as we start modeling those things. So it's definitely going to bring some challenges, but I think we're excited about the opportunities that it's going to bring too. We're all going to be better because of this.
I'm seeing kids diving into some projects and exploring and seeing what that can look like, figuring out things that we haven't even really thought about yet, just because they are so open. So we have about 3 minutes remaining. Is there anything, like any last comments that anybody wants to share about our current situation and how we can continue to support everyone, teachers, students, parents, families, community, over the course of the next few weeks before we get back to school? Any last comments?
I'm just going to throw it out there. I think in order for us to be successful, no matter what we end up having the situation look like, whether it's in person, virtual, completely NTI, however that looks, we need to remember we need to be patient with everyone. Teachers need to be patient with parents and students. They need to be patient with us. We need to be patient with the central office staff. And we need to also be flexible. We have to understand that this is new territory that we're experiencing. And as a teacher, I know that I'm going to have to completely reimagine how I do things because of the situation we're in. So some of my students will be at home learning. Some of my students will be in class. We've got to make sure we have that flexibility and the patience to get through this together.
And I'll just reiterate, based on what we've seen in kind of our chat on YouTube and a lot of questions that go around, is that I know there's a lot of noise outside of our situation that we can hear from either across the state or across the nation about others are doing the situation. So I think it's important that we value the information will help us have some clarity. And so really going back to the information that is put out by the district and by your schools, and really connecting and making sure the information that you're getting is the most accurate information for your situation. And that way, I think it alleviates some of the fear we may have around what's going to happen as we all try to communicate effectively.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. So I love that flexibility, adaptability. We're all in this together. So in closing, I want to thank the panel. Thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you out in YouTube for engaging and sharing some questions. Don't forget, if you have additional questions or need additional information, to go to welcomebackincs.com. We hope to see you back next week, where we will be discussing virtual learning. You all have a fantastic weekend.